This story came from a woman named Lydia Park, who grew up in a small New England town where every house decorated its windows with candles during the holidays. It was an old tradition, something to guide travelers home, as her grandmother used to say. Lydia never thought twice about it until the winter she returned after college, when one candle in particular started behaving in ways she still can't explain. Her parents had moved into a new house on the edge of town, a quiet place backed up against a stretch of woods. The first night she got home for Christmas break, she noticed a single red candle glowing in the upstairs guest room window. She assumed her mom had just placed it there for decoration, but her mom frowned when she mentioned it at dinner. "We don't have any red candles," she said. "We only bought white ones this year." Lydia brushed it off. Maybe her dad picked one up last minute. Maybe she'd misremembered the color. But when she went upstairs again, the candle was still there, tall, red, and burning steadily, even though the window was closed tightly, with no way for a flame to breathe. She felt a prickle of unease, but told herself she was imagining it. She blew the candle out before going to bed. The next morning it was lit again. She checked the wick. It was wet with melted wax, too warm to have been recently lit by hand. She brought it downstairs to show her parents, but when she turned the corner into the kitchen, the candle slipped from her hands and dropped to the floor. It didn't break. It didn't even roll. It landed upright, flames still burning. That night, snow started falling heavily, the kind of storm that makes you feel cut off from the rest of the world. Lydia tried to sleep, but every few minutes, the room brightened faintly, as though headlights were passing outside, except the house sat alone on a long private road, and no cars would be out in weather like this. Around midnight, she checked the window. The red candle was lit again, resting on the sill, even though she had left it downstairs. And outside, beyond the glass, she saw shapes in the snow. Not footprints, drag marks. Long, sweeping trails that curved around the yard, leading from the woods directly toward her window before veering away again like something had approached and circled the house. As she stared, a shadow crossed the yard. Slow, tall, moving in a straight line toward the house. Lydia backed away from the window. She tried to wake her parents, but they were fast asleep and impossible to rouse. The whole house felt unnaturally still, as if the storm outside had muffled everything. Every sound, every instinct telling her to run. When she returned to her room, the candle flame was burning brighter, much brighter. It flickered wildly even without a breeze, casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. One shadow, she realized, didn't match anything in the room. It stood in the corner, slender, motionless, too tall to belong to her or any furniture. And as the candlelight shivered, the shadow seemed to lean forward, its head tilting slightly, like it was watching her from the edge of the darkness. The candle suddenly went out. The room fell completely dark. She didn't sleep at all that night. In the morning, the storm had passed. The candle was gone. Her parents swore they had never seen it, never touched it. The yard outside was covered in untouched snow. No drag marks, no footprints, nothing. But as Lydia helped her mom take down decorations after New Year's, she found something beneath a pile of unused garland in the storage closet. A tall red candle. Wax dripped down the sides as though it had burned all through the night. And around the base, melted into the wood of the storage shelf, was a perfect ring, shaped like something had been standing there, waiting. This story comes from a man named Caleb Rowe, who refuses to spend Christmas anywhere near his childhood home. He says people laugh when he tells them why, until he explains what he saw the winter he turned 15, when something came out of the woods and tried to follow him inside. Caleb lived on the outskirts of a small northern town where the snow fell early and thick, and where the darkness seemed to last longer than it should. His house faced the road, but behind it stretched a mile of dense, silent forest. His parents always warned him about the woods, especially in winter. "Things move differently out there," his father used to say. Caleb thought he meant coyotes. On Christmas Eve, a brutal cold front swept in. His parents were away visiting neighbors, leaving him alone with the dog and the soft glow of the tree lights. Around 9, he stepped outside to bring in firewood. That's when he heard it, a sharp, rhythmic crunch of footsteps in the snow, coming from the far edge of the yard. Not an animal. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, purposeful. He expected to see someone from the road, maybe a lost traveler, but the sound came from the opposite direction, from the woods. Caleb stood there listening, breath white in the air, as the footsteps grew closer. Then he heard another set, and another. A whole group, walking in uneven unison, crunching the snow with a dragging cadence that made his stomach twist. He backed toward the house. The footsteps stopped. Caleb stared into the dark tree line. Silence hung so thick it felt alive. Then, as he turned to go inside, he saw something shift between the pines. A figure, tall, bone-thin, motionless. He froze. Another figure stepped out beside it. Then another. 3 shapes, standing in bleak white snow, turning their heads toward him in perfect unison. They weren't wearing coats. They weren't shivering. They weren't moving at all. Caleb bolted inside, locked the door, and shut every curtain in the house. His dog paced the living room, whining, ears pinned back. She kept glancing toward the back windows, as if expecting something to appear. 10 minutes later, the knocking began. Soft at first. A single tap. Then 2. Then 3. Deliberate, patient taps on the back door. Caleb stood frozen in the hallway, while his dog growled low in her throat. Something she had never done before. He didn't dare look through the peephole. The tapping grew louder. Not frantic, not angry, just steady. As though whoever was out there had all the time in the world. Then it stopped. Caleb thought it was over, until he heard the creaking of snow beneath weight. Footsteps circling the house, slow, dragging. Pausing beneath every window, he felt each footfall in his chest like the vibrations were traveling through the floorboards. The footsteps reached his bedroom window and stopped. Absolute silence. He hid in his closet, dog pressed against him, both of them shaking. Minutes crawled by. Then, from the window, came a sound he says he will never forget. Breathing. long, heavy, hollow breathing. Something large, something inches from the glass, something that had no business being that close without leaving fog on the pane. But the glass stayed perfectly clear. The breathing grew louder, then suddenly cut off, as if someone's hand had closed over a mouth. Caleb didn't move until his parents came home an hour later. When he finally worked up the courage to look outside, the backyard was covered in fresh snowdrifts, except for 3 long, perfectly straight paths leading from the woods to the house, stopping inches from the walls as though something had stood there for a very long time. And on the back door, just above the handle, was a mark melted into the frost, the shape of a hand, except the fingers were too long, too thin, and bent at angles that looked wrong. A week later, Caleb's father boarded up the back windows. A month later, they moved, and Caleb never returned to that house, even though it still stands. Locals say that every winter, just after the first heavy snowfall, people see tall shapes moving through the trees behind the property. Always 3, always silent, always walking in that same slow, dragging rhythm, waiting for someone to come outside again. This story came from a woman named Rachel Dwyer, who says she has never set foot in her childhood home again, not even to collect the belongings she left behind the night everything happened. The house still stands, but she refuses to drive down the old road where it sits, especially not in December. Rachel grew up in a small, aging house built over a crawl space. The underside was cramped, barely tall enough for a person to kneel in. Her father stored tools under there, and sometimes raccoons or cats would wander through. The family always joked that the house had company beneath it. When Rachel was 12, her mother started putting tiny brass bells along the floor vents during the holidays. They were decorative, little golden bells with red ribbon loops, and her mom said they made the house feel festive. But Rachel noticed they were never hung anywhere else, only near the vents, only in winter, and only at night did her mother quietly check to see if any had moved. One Christmas Eve, while her parents were at a late service, Rachel stayed home alone, wrapped in a blanket, watching the snow fall through the window. Around 11, she heard something strange. A soft jingling. Not from the tree, not from the ornaments, but from the floor. She looked down at the nearest vent. The bell beside it was trembling, shaking by itself, as if something below the vent was brushing up against it. She knelt and listened. The metal grate was cold beneath her hand. She heard faint, rhythmic sounds beneath the house, not animal noises, something like shifting, dragging, breathing. Her parents always said the crawl space was too small for anyone to get into without moving the entire access hatch, a heavy metal sheet sealed with bolts. Rachel told herself it had to be pipes settling or the heater kicking on. Then she realized the heater wasn't running. Another bell jingled from across the room, and then another. The bells began to tremble in sequence, vent to vent, as though something was crawling beneath the entire house, slowly making its way toward her. Rachel backed into the hallway, heart pounding. Every vent she passed gave a tiny metallic shake, like something brushing against them from below. She ran to her parents' room and shut the door. For a moment, everything went quiet. Then she heard it. A low, muffled knock from beneath the floorboards. Just once, gentle, almost polite, like someone was tapping from underneath, trying to get her attention. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. The knock came again, softer, closer. She heard the faint scrape of something moving in the crawl space directly under the bed. A slow, sliding sound. The bells out in the hall jingled in response, one by one. Rachel curled up beside the dresser and waited. She didn't remember falling asleep, but she woke to her father shaking her gently. It was after midnight. She was trembling, barely able to speak. Her parents searched the house, then the crawl space. Everything was in place, except for the bells. Every bell in the house had been moved. Not far, only an inch or two. But all of them had been nudged closer to the vents, aligned in narrow rows as if someone had carefully pushed each one into position from below. Rachel's father checked the crawl space hatch. The bolts were untouched. No footprints in the snow. No signs of animals. Nothing disturbed but the bells. They never moved back. Years later, Rachel's father finally admitted something he had never told her. Something he wishes he had said sooner. When Rachel was a baby during their first winter in the house, the bells had started moving on their own. Her mother put them by the vents, because whenever the bells jingled, something underneath the house would fall silent, as if listening. Something lived down there, her father said. The house is still empty, still standing, still sitting over that narrow, dark crawl space. And every December, neighbors say they hear faint jingling coming from inside. Not from the wind, not from animals, from under the floor. This story came from Michael Stern, who grew up in a small rural neighborhood where every family knew every other family. He says what he saw one Christmas night still makes him lock every door in his house before the sun sets. When Michael was 11, his parents threw a small Christmas Eve party. Neighbors came over, children played in the yard, and the adults sat around drinking hot cider. Snow had been falling steadily all day, soft and quiet. Around 9, several families began walking home through the lightly dusted street. As things wound down, Michael stepped outside alone to look at the decorations. His house sat on a long, sloped yard ending in a cluster of pine trees. Streetlights didn't reach that far, so the bottom of the yard was swallowed in blue darkness. That's when he saw her. A little girl, standing at the tree line. White nightgown, bare feet, hair the color of winter sunlight. At first he thought she belonged to one of the neighbors. Maybe she'd gotten lost. But the longer he stared, the more wrong everything felt. She stood too still, too straight, arms at her sides, unmoving. Even the wind didn't seem to touch her. The trees swayed. Snowflakes drifted, but she remained perfectly still, as if frozen in the moment he first saw her. Michael took one step toward her. The girl's head tilted sharply, not slowly, not naturally. A sudden stiff jerk, like a puppet string being pulled. Her face wasn't visible. The shadows hid everything but the mouth. A small smile stretched across her pale cheeks. Not sweet, not friendly, wide, too wide. Michael backed up. The girl didn't move. until he reached the porch light. Then she took one step forward, barefoot, sinking soundlessly into the snow. He turned and hurried inside, telling his parents someone was in the yard. By the time they looked outside, the girl was gone. Everyone brushed it off as imagination. The dark, the snow, the excitement of Christmas Eve. But Michael didn't sleep that night. Something gnawed at him. That unnatural tilt of her head. The way she smiled straight at him from the shadows. Around 3 a.m, soft tapping woke him. Tap, tap, tap. He sat up in bed, heart hammering. The sound came from outside his window. 3 soft taps, like someone gently tapping with their fingernails. He pulled back the curtain. She was standing in the snow beneath his window. Her face was clearer now, illuminated by moonlight. Her eyes were empty, not hollow or bloody, just absent, like she hadn't grown them yet. Her smile hadn't changed. It was impossibly wide, stretching farther than a human face should. She raised her hand slowly, palm up, as if asking him to come outside. Michael screamed. His father ran in, flipped on the lights, and threw open the blinds. No footprints in the snow, no girl, nothing. But when his father stepped outside to check, he slipped in something on the porch. A small puddle of water, warm water, as if someone had been standing there barefoot, snow melting off their feet. The next morning, Michael found something buried in the snow near the bottom of the yard, right where the girl had stood. A small, old-fashioned silver locket. Inside was a faded sepia photograph. A little girl in a white nightgown, smiling that same wide, unnatural smile. His parents threw it away immediately. But Michael swears, some nights, close to Christmas, he still sees footprints in the frost on the far edge of his yard, leading from the trees toward the house, never away. And sometimes, just before sunrise, he hears soft tapping on the window. Tap, 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 like fingernails, patient, waiting.